folks. Welcome to an episode of the Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Dan. He is Mac.
Howdy.
Now, this episode, before we begin, there's a quick thing on the docket. I've already screwed up once again that I need to talk about once more. At the beginning of the previous episode, for current events, I'm just not going to give too much context, but I talked about former University of Miami coach Manny Diaz. I said he was there at the U during those U days. That is wholly incorrect. Manny Diaz went to FSU.
Holy shit.
It's a big fine.
That's hilarious.
That's a big penalty.
But that's still only 1 point.
And so, the reason why he was coach was because he was defensive coordinator. Well, actually, I think he was defensive. I'm gonna lay the blanket down. I think he was defensive coordinator under Mark Richt. If not, he was part of the coaching staff regardless. I'm giving myself that qualifier just in case I'm wrong again. That is Mac, give us a tally.
The current tally is Dan Man 4, Mac Attack 1.
That's really bad for me.
Bad news for you, pal.
That's really, really bad.
Good news for me, because Party City is waiting on my money. Yes, sir?
I went up and I grabbed the wrong sticky note. I thought I grabbed the sticky note that has all the penalty points qualifications. I didn't. So anyways, we'll forget about that for now. Nevertheless, we are reviewing...
We have something to do here today.
Dark Season 2.
Dark Season 2.
Dark is a German television show on Netflix. It is very, very well done. It is, if you're listening to Season 2, then you probably already know what happens in Season 1.
Hopefully.
Time loop. It's a big old time loop that's going on, and these characters are figuring it out and exploring it. It is a direct continuation of Season 1 taking place, if my math is 7 months later. And so, Mac, right before we started airing, you said that this is the best, the most well done season of Dark / your favorite season.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, we can't talk about the third season too much, right?
Yeah.
You at least have that under your belt. But I'm watching this. I'm watching this with naked eyes.
And I have not even finished Season 3 yet, and I can say with absolute confidence.
You mean the second go around? Or just period?
I have not finished Season 3, period.
Oh, wow.
I made it a point not to finish Season 3 because I had watched Season 1 and Season 2, and then I rewatched Season 1 and Season 2 for us, but the second that I realized that I wanted to do it for the podcast, I stopped so that I could watch Season 3 with you.
Oh.
Because now I'm kind of seasoned in terms of my opinions. I'm aged like a fine wine on Season 1 and Season 2. But Season 3, I want it to be a fresh rip.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. Okay.
But with the few episodes, I think I've seen 4 episodes, maybe 5, of Season 3 so far.
Okay.
And I can tell you with absolute certainty that Season 2 is the best season of Dark.
Wow. Okay. So
So sorry to let you down.
Well, this episode is largely, I imagine, going to be about comparing Season 1 to Season 2, the differences, the qualities.
Sure.
It's important to regard that, right? And then also view this season for its own merit.
Yeah.
But
not necessarily in terms of quality, but in terms of just evolution. Like, you have to...
Yeah, how does the season fare by itself, and how does this season compare to the previous? So, off the bat, then what were the big things that were, hitting you across the face about what made this season better in comparison to the first one? What made this season different in regards to the first one, or the same, that made it a better experience for you?
Sure. So one thing they really made very clear in the first season is that it wasn't necessarily that it was just the series that was obsessed with getting their first act out of the way.
Sure.
It was that we went through the exposition and got to the inciting incident of every single character in the show. Or not every single character. Every main character. All of the main characters, we saw their setup. We saw the first act of all of their stories. It wasn't just the first act of the show. It was the first act for everybody. And that was the big downfall of Season 1, is that it felt like we were watching exposition every episode the entire time until like maybe the last episode. And then everyone got their inciting incident. Mm-hmm. And that was the downfall. I would say that in the exact same way, the big plus of this season is that, one, we finally get a lot of people having to finally deal with some shit, as well as everyone gets a turning point. So everyone has some sort of plot twist. Everyone has some sort of crazy shit happen to them.
I'm with you there.
And so, I can't think of a single episode of this season that something wild didn't happen, or something that was truly shocking or that I didn't necessarily expect. And one thing that was a big changer from season 1 to season 2 for me is that whereas in season 1, I was really obsessed with trying to figure out what was about to happen, and predicting, and they did a really good job of not just posing questions, but shoving questions down your throat.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
perhaps
in season 1, some questions that were really thrown at you, like, who is Jonas's dad and why did he kill himself? And where did Mikkel go? And like whenever they ask these questions, it's not like they just pose them and move on. It's like they shove them in your face and they're like, "Don't you want to know? Don't you want to know? Well, we're going to talk about it, but we can't yet talk about it." And like we're going to have to explore it. And it's like kind of that. In this season, there's just so many exclamation points in terms of answered questions that I really am satisfied. And season 2, like I said earlier, whereas in season 1 I was really interested in trying to figure out what was going to happen next, in season 2 I finally allowed myself to stop. Does that make any sense? Like I stopped guessing what was going to happen next.
Gotcha.
I just allowed myself
to be on the ride.
Right. I realized this show is so fucking obsessed, and I do not use that word lightly, obsessed with making their own rules or telling the audience a set of rules and then breaking them, that there's no reason for me to even start guessing. It's like Lamb.
Okay.
Where like I thought I knew what movie I was watching, and in the last 10 minutes I was not watching that movie at all anymore when the Ram Man shows up.
But for better or for worse?
For better in dark. For better in dark.
Not for better in Lamb?
Not for better in Lamb. I mean, Lamb was wild, and I really appreciate that experience, but at the same time, I would not say it aided my experience at all. Sure. Here, I think it was incredibly aided by the fact that I stopped trying to figure out what was happening.
Okay.
And I just allowed it to happen. Because whenever things would happen, instead of me being like, oh, dang, that was wrong, or like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense, because I just was like, cool, that's wild. Okay, next.
We are at a very sort of interesting conundrum between the two of us.
Because I bet that you were the exact opposite. And
For
I bet
the most part,
that a lot of time
I liked season 1 a lot more than season 2.
What?
Yes.
How?
But but what were you gonna say?
Is it? I was just me guessing. Is it because there were so many times where you felt the story moving in a certain direction, and then it just was like, "Yep, fuck that, neck." Like we're going a different way.
Not yes, and also no. So, I cracked my knuckle. I think for the same reason that you enjoyed this season more, which was allowing yourself to go on the ride. I think what brought you to said ride was also what made me dislike this one more. I think even though everything is still very, very well done in terms of direction, action, setting, like this is a wonderful piece of media. And the fact that I think it's both its biggest aid and I think its biggest detriment, I find, the structure of Dark, where it's literally multiple decades working at once at the same time. Yeah. Right? Per se, you know? And so, which is very impressive when not only are they working with 2019 or now 2020, but so far, you know, whatever. Yeah. 2019, 1986, 1953, but then they also add in 1920 and 19. Oh God, I'm doing the math in my head.
21 and
I'd say and 2051.
20.
But then 2052 in the show. Whatever. Point is, it's very, very impressive that they can have that complete concurrent storytelling. Because I can imagine it's very, very hard to narrow down and very, very tricky to figure out, especially when you have characters like Jonas and Claudia who are time hopping all over the goddamn place.
Right.
Doubly so Jonas, when Jonas is like 3 really big characters at the same time.
Yeah.
And then he also goes back to 2019, but the show is set in like 2020.
Also,
and so right before his father kills himself, and so then you have to take that into account when. So it's like it's a whole bunch of things that's going on
right.
at once structurally.
It must be a bitch to direct. Exactly. But also that it's not only is Jonas 3 big characters, but I like the way that you phrase that because it's not that Jonas is a huge character. It really is. There are 3 different Jonases.
Yes.
And they're wildly different.
Yes.
And I think that might be one of my biggest qualms with the show.
And we'll get into that. Yeah. We'll get into that. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. But
we're making the same realizations and having different opinions on everything, it seems.
Relatively. I think, once again, like I said, structurally, great. Structurally, also bad. Because, not bad, that was mean, but I didn't like it as much because what is so interesting to me about the first season is figuring out that it's a loop. I don't like how the first season ended.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, there's just no resolution. Like, I was at least wanting some form of resolution, even if everything was a loop, right?
Yeah.
And so then the second season is exactly that, for the most part, that everything is still a loop, that it's just the second season takes place in another cycle, quote unquote, 7 months after the first season.
Yeah.
And so then once you figure out by like the first or second episode, oh shit, it's just another loop, that doesn't change by the final episode. And so then it's just kind of watching to figure out like, okay, so how are the events taking place as opposed to like anything else, right? Well, not how are the events taking place, because like you're trying to put together that time loop is happening, right? And so then it's just more of that in the second season where you already know time loop is there, and I don't think they necessarily add anything to the time loop, nor do they do something differently about it. And I think that's my biggest qualm structurally, that it felt like just a continuation of the first season as opposed to being its own story in its own way. Maybe I'm old school in that fashion, that like I want seasons of televisions to be like their own sort of like vignettes per se. But there's a part of me where I don't think the season 2 does necessarily enough new things.
Yeah.
I think like with the introduction of Adam, who is just spoiler, a very old Jonas.
Yeah.
With burn marks.
Who has some questionable that we don't know.
Yeah, and so and that's another thing. That's another thing. Oh, don't you worry. That's another thing. Yeah. But and so that's like the biggest thing about it, right? And then like figuring out, oh, Adam's like henchmen, one of them is Noah, and Noah's Charlotte's dad, and then also Magnus and Franziska are still alive. Okay. But like that's the most, and then Jonas is actually the one that kills Martha. And then Jonas wants to save Martha, but it's 2 different Jonases. And so like those are the most interesting things, and that was the one moment in the show. But it was at the very end, and I'm like, oh my god, Jonas killed Martha. What the hell?
Yeah.
And then at the very end, a Martha from a different universe, it seems, just steps in. And I'm like, that's actually kind of what I wanted more from this season.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily want the loop to break, but I wanted the loop to bend a little.
Yeah.
I wanted something to actually change. This is a question. Have you seen Loki?
Yeah.
This is a spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen Loki. You know how they have those like deviations, right? Yeah. When you mess up too much in the timeline, and so then it creates its own timeline. But remember how Loki figures out that right before a disaster, you can't create a deviation?
Yeah.
Like, I wish there was, because, like, whatever you do, whatever's going to happen, the disaster is still going to come. So you can tell everybody you can do X, Y, and Z, and it won't matter.
Right.
That I wish there was some, like, bend or wiggle room in the loop. That I wish there was some actual variability that was happening.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Right.
And so then doubly so, the whole time I'm like, why doesn't Jonas just kill himself?
Okay, that is the question of the whole series.
That it was only quasi answered with Noah trying to kill Adam / older Jonas.
That it wasn't
and
his
he wasn't just wasn't destiny, so the gun wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my god, so there was an attempt to do something.
Yeah.
And so then it actually feels like destiny is at play as opposed to a character making just really weird decisions.
Right.
You know?
So
like it would have been interesting for
around-
Jonah to like try to shoot himself and he just couldn't get the gun to work.
Right. Sure. And maybe we do get that. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
The one of the big moments of season 2 for me, I talked to my dad about it, right? Because my dad, like, this is one of his favorite shows. It's definitely not one of my favorite shows, but it's one of his favorite. And I think the reason he likes it so much is because there are so many times in the show where something happens and you have to pause it to try and figure out, like, or just take a moment, because he's big into trying to find errors or like plot holes, right?
Yeah,
and
like,
so there are so many
yeah.
times where there should be plot holes, but the more you think about it, the more you're like, oh no, that kind of does make sense. They really set themselves up for that. I guess there's nothing that could stop that from being true. Like Charlotte and Charlotte's mother.
Yeah. That Charlotte is Elizabeth's mother and Elizabeth is Charlotte's mother.
Yeah. And like at first you're like, okay, that's bullshit. Wait a minute. And then you're like, well, wait, no, I guess.
Yeah,
that's possible. Yeah. You're right. Exactly. Or like the is it the bootstrap paradox?
H.G. Tenenhouse talks about it. At maybe at the beginning of the season, I think.
where just the concept that, because you're like, oh wow, Tenenhouse is the one that made the time machine, and that's so cool that he did that.
Yeah.
But it was given to him by someone from the future. So
Yeah.
if something was given to you by someone in the future, but they continuously bring it, then no one made it in the first place.
Once again, like, and I brought this up when we reviewed the first season as well. The fact that this show has paradoxes is fine because the show addresses, hey, these things are paradoxes.
Right.
They shouldn't be happening, and yet they are.
Right.
Like, that's just like a sort of given circumstance for that world. And so because they approach paradoxes in that way, I'm completely fine with that.
Right. And there are so many of those in this show, and that's what makes my dad love it so much. Season 2, episode 6.
Okay.
That's the episode.
Have to remind me what happens in that.
That's the episode where Michael, who's Mickle, but Jonas' dad, is about to kill himself.
Yeah.
And so like Claudia and Jonas like have those conversations with the Michael that's about to kill himself and whether he should or not, right? And in that episode, I realized, and I talked to my dad about this, I was like, oh, so the whole point of the show is that no matter what you do, everything that's going to happen has already happened and was supposed to happen, and it is going to happen no matter what you do.
Yes.
And so every single character that is aware of the timeline in the show now has the ultimate goal of to stop the timeline.
And so what does that mean? And so now we're going to go back to something that you brought up earlier, that like we don't know like half of these characters' objectives.
Right.
I don't understand Adam's
you see
objective.
them acting for sure.
You see them acting on those objectives, but we have no idea what those objectives are, which is frustrating to watch. Because then you're just like, why are you doing this?
Because you're trying to figure out what the motive is, but there's no context that you really have as to, like, I don't know enough about this secret organization, like, it's not Sons of Adam, but like whatever this...
Yeah, the Travelers or whatever, Sigmundus.
That's what it is, thank you.
We don't know their motivations, but I think what's even worse, we don't know Claudia's. I don't know what Claudia's trying to do. She's trying to stop Adam. What does that mean?
And funny enough, the further we get into the season, the more I'm actually sketched out by Claudia than I am by Adam, because at least Adam, like, he doesn't say a whole lot, but at least he's saying something.
Yeah.
Like, Claudia gives you fucking zero to go off of. And I'm like, I'm just kind of frustrated with you at this point, that you're doing things and...
Like, your goal
who the hell are you?
Your goal is to stop Adam.
Yeah.
And stopping Adam means, like, not creating a new world, but preserving the old one. But, like, what does that look like?
And what is that? And why does it matter?
It's such an intangible
but then
objective
by the end
to describe to the audience.
Right. But by the end of season 2, you get the sense, okay, Claudia's trying to save this world, whereas Adam is trying to destroy the world because that was God's intention, was for the apocalypse to come.
Yes.
But still, why? Like,
where is it?
Like, I understand that, okay, so the motivation, the inspiration that Adam has to do what he's doing comes from a place of God intended it, and I am here as a servant of God. Yeah. And
or to oppose God. It's time, like they're going against time, meaning they're going against God.
Right. And then Claudia is coming from a place of, I would like to save our planet.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I do wish that I would have gotten that earlier, I suppose.
And there's a part of me too where I'm like, oh, now that we're talking this through, I would have been much more interested in like seeing more Adam think through process, or seeing more Claudia think through. And when I say Claudia, I mean Claudia that has already figured out all the time mumbo jumbo,
old
as
Claudia.
opposed to
old
1986
Claudia,
Claudia just getting the time machine and being
right.
like, what the hell do I do now?
Okay, right there though. This is, if you were to do that,
yes,
I think you are sacrificing one of the coolest parts of the show, and that is they do a really good job of making sure that you don't know much about the past or the future at any given moment. Yeah. So we're constantly getting something new that we have no idea what's going to happen in the 80s, the present time, the future, and the 1920s. You know what I mean?
And the 50s.
And like usually if I know, for instance, if I know Hannah, present day Hannah,
sure,
then I should know a lot already about past Hannah.
Yeah.
But then you figure out, no, I don't. I clearly do not know much about past Hannah or past is it Katarina?
What Katarina Nielsen?
Yeah.
Mom of Mikkel, Magnus, and Martha. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a very impressive element of the show, that there are very few times where I'm able to predict the past or future of a character based on that character in other timelines.
Which is
like everything, like all of the secrets that the show has, they're really good at keeping those secrets. Does that make any sense?
I'm with you there.
Like the writers of this show did an impeccable job on knowing the exact moment that they want the audience to know something.
Yeah.
I could have never guessed.
And so then when you, for the most part, whenever you find out, it's like, oh, that was satisfying. Even if you figure it out early, it's like, I got that answer at an appropriate moment.
Right. Like my jaw was absolutely freaking dropped whenever Noah told, sorry, I'm just trying to get names right. Whenever Noah told Charlotte.
Maybe you should have looked at IMDb of all the names in this series. Criminy.
No, I'm getting all of them. It just takes a second. Whenever Noah tells Charlotte that he is her father.
Right.
I did not see that coming at all.
No, neither did I. Yeah.
On that, at the very beginning of season 2, you see young Noah outside the cave.
Yeah.
In the 20s.
Yeah. He's mining for the door.
Mining for the door. He's with a guy.
Yeah.
And he kills that guy.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that guy.
You did forget about that guy.
Oh, no.
They don't ever confirm or deny this.
Okay.
But do you have any guess as to who that guy is?
Well, now that we're talking about it, is that Clausen's brother? Oh, and Clausen is the detective that they introduced in this season. AKA the lamest storyline.
Agreed. Well, also, confusing storyline, because he's like kind of mysteriously like, I have secret motive.
It was entirely a character just so they could open the barrel at the end of the season.
It was.
So, like, that dark matter thing.
It's just another fucking Alexander. Where it's like, you want to make it all mysterious and interesting.
And, like,
what's
you don't
this
have
guy
to.
about?
It could just be a person that exists in this world. But then, so then
why can't someone stumble upon it?
We spent so much time, and it was like, this doesn't feel earned, per se.
Right.
And then, because, like, you make the whole thing about the loop, then you're like, okay, so this is not about the loop period.
Yeah.
This sort of exploration. So then it just feels counterproductive to the overall storytelling that you're trying to achieve.
And I would actually go as far as to say that that is the biggest obstacle that the show puts in its own way, is that it made a promise to itself at the very beginning of the show. And there was a promise that I think ended up hindering it, which was every single character is going to have a complete arc and every single character is going to have a secret, right? Interesting concept, tiresome after a while, because there are certain characters that I just flat out am more interested in. And it's okay if like for instance, I think all of season 1 and most of season 2, I didn't give much of a shit about Martha, personally.
Yeah.
I thought that she, it was cool that she was there as an idea or as a dream that Jonas was chasing.
Sure.
I get that. Actual Martha, I keep saying Martha because that's just the...
Yeah, it's how it's pronounced. Yeah. Either way.
Is...
Nowitzki,
boring as shit. I don't care. Last moment of season 2 makes me go, is Martha about to get cool? And I won't tell you what happens. 3, obviously.
Alternate dimension.
Right, alternate dimension Martha.
The multiverse.
Martha, right. It's almost like in Rick and Morty whenever the sister comes from another dimension and she's super dark and heavy metal.
Yeah.
It's exactly, you're like, oh my god, is she wearing eyeliner? But
sure.
But it bothers me that there are definitely characters that don't need secrets, don't need a full arc.
Yeah.
And whenever you add those people into the mix, I start to care less and less about the other. It actually takes away, I think, from the validity and the excitement of the other people's secrets. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. I care
it's
less
an inflation
and less.
of sort.
Right. I think
it's literally inflation.
Oh, you're right. It's an economic inflation. You're exactly correct.
Yeah.
It's that the more you add,
so much at once,
the less value there is all around. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, if every single secret is $1,
dramatic inflation. I'm loving this, Danny.
If every single secret is $1, and there's so many secrets, then
if you don't think
an individual secret has less buying power.
If you don't think that this is going to be one of the clips on YouTube, you're out of your goddamn mind. This is genius, Danny. I'm so proud of you.
Inflation.
I'm proud of us. We did that. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Dramatic inflation. The more you add, the less it is in value. And you're absolutely correct. That the more
better example, in my opinion, Franziska and the sex worker.
Fucking preach.
Paying for pills, I think. Something like that. I can hardly remember.
You're exactly correct in not remembering. Who cares?
Exactly.
Literally, who cares?
Yeah.
And that takes away from the dad, from the Charlotte's husband.
Peter.
Peter. Care less about Peter. The more you're showing me of pills, buying the drugs. I'm just giving you plot points.
Man, are you tired? Are you okay?
I'm a little tired, but that was so fast.
And we're going to break.
That's it.
All right, I guess if you want to leave.
Welcome back to the Artenders. I actually
in the middle of me speaking.
Fuck
too.
Yeah, in the middle of you speaking. I actually really enjoyed that that idea. It was mainly because we sat down at the same time, and I looked at the frame and I was like, "That's so damn cute. I just need to start. That needs to be the beginning." You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I wanted to make sure that no matter what, I've made the executive decision that that's how we begin this half. And on that, Daniel Arturo Lavelle.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Is that okay that I give you full name?
Yeah, I mean, cool. You've already done that multiple times.
I've said Daniel, and I've given your last name, but I don't think I've given a middle name yet. Have I?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Secrets. Yeah. Secrets is what we're talking about. Secrets are no fun. No, that's not true. They're awesome. And
do you want to get to your point?
No. I'm just going to keep talking right around. This is. I was told this by a friend of mine a long time ago, that this is the point, and this is me. For those listening to us, I'm just circling.
Holy hell!
My
get to what
around.
you're trying to get at, please.
Okay, fine.
It's not fun to listen to.
It is
for you.
Oh. And a good example is of secrets and the way that secrets work in this show. Against the show's betterment is secrets held by Marta. That I don't really give much of a shit about Marta in the second season until the very end.
Yeah.
And so the more that Jonas cares about Marta, the more that Jonas focuses on her and what's going on in her life, and then we as an audience have to focus on Marta, and I don't fucking care anymore.
Yeah,
I would rather Jonas just go off and save the world like he's trying to.
I think the most that you care about Martha is either like because you feel bad for her in this predicament / you just believe in Jonas's plight, but not because Martha herself is like a vastly that well-developed character with an arc per se. She has like a mini one towards the end when she finds out that Jonas is her nephew. So it's funny to just say that out loud.
Yeah, well, and rightfully so. I mean, good God, I can't even imagine.
Just leave Winden, guys. Just leave Winden, like, please.
True. Okay, and that's another plot hole in my opinion.
Yeah. That is, I think. Yeah.
Why does no one get the fuck out?
Like nobody.
It's only this town.
Yeah, and so like it is interesting. Like I think the biggest example is like Michael Conwald, for example. How like you're choosing to stay in the town where you literally were transported in time like why are you choosing to do that?
Exactly. I completely agree. I think
it's a weird motivation that I feel like deserves some explanation as to why you just stay in one place.
Yeah, maybe the most confusing part of the show to me is...
And doubly so with Hannah as well. I mean, I guess maybe not so because, she's just obsessed with Ulrich. But it's fascinating that she's still obsessed with Ulrich.
Yeah.
Like, when you start to think about it, like, for 33 years...
Yeah.
She's still head over heels for this one man.
Yeah.
Like, crazily so, unhealthily so.
Absolutely. Well, also, he has... In another way, he has, like, strung her along for 33 years. Because he clearly kept the flirting going to the point where they were able to have an affair together after effect. And also... You will be. I'm gonna leave season 3 alone.
Well, obviously.
Sorry.
As we should, right? I'm happy that you're armed with a little bit of context of season 3 to compare it to season 2 and how season 2 stands on its own. Right?
Sure. In terms of the review, but in terms of the content, I will leave it alone.
Okay.
I think the worst thing that the show does in keeping it in a small town with the same people the entire time, and making sure that none of those people ever leave, weird, is that at the end of season 2, or like maybe the last half, the issues become a matter of saving the world, but it's hard for me to understand the size of those stakes if you never show me the world.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Not quite, but I think I'm almost there.
So, if they don't, like Claudia, for instance, if Claudia does not succeed by the end of season 2, then the world will end. Literally, the entire world will end.
Yeah.
And we will, like, be going into some sort of apocalypse, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a Winden thing, that's a world thing. But because we never leave Winden, I don't
it's hard
care
to put
as much.
it into like it's hard to put that into context.
Right.
Hard to get the framing around
because it's such an isolated show.
Yeah.
And it seems so fantastical. And it never really roots itself in like this is real life. And I just get so far away from it. And part of it is the same tone that I was talking about earlier, where like part of the way through season 2, I just stopped trying to guess. I was like, you know what? Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. The rules are clearly bendy, and I can't guess what's going to happen. So I'm just going to let the show take me away.
Yeah.
Because of that, I was not fully enveloped by the stakes because I did not have any
once again, it's framing not only in the setting, but it's framing once again tying back to what we were saying in the first part of this episode, in the first segment of the framing of like, what does this look like to these characters, right? When, to bring in the MCU.
Funny, I was actually thinking the exact same thing. Because whenever we talk about, like, world stakes.
Yeah, when Thanos, the biggest villain so far introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, says, I'm going to wipe out just life in half. And then you get a really detailed explanation by him as to why he's going to do that, as to how he's going to do that, as to what that's going to look like for him, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's that multiple step-by-step process of, like, understanding a character's motivation, a pinnacle character motivation, so then that really helps aid in the overall storytelling and invest yourself, the audience member, in the stakes of what's going on for these characters. But when I don't understand why Adam is doing anything, which is one big opposing force, and then I don't understand why the opposite opposing force, Claudia, is doing anything, then, like, I'm literally just watching people suffer. And I'm just like, but they're suffering for nothing, and that's in the human sense, that drives me bananas.
Yeah.
Because there's a part of me, too, where I'm just like, it's a very sweet way of thinking of, like, stop doing this to these characters. You know?
Right.
You're
You're torturing
these
them.
characters don't deserve this. Why are you doing this to them?
How long did it take for you to realize that Adam and Noah's characters are
How they're just
symbolically and
else?
religiously named?
I mean, probably the moment they said the name Noah in, like, the first season.
Holy shit! The very first time you were like,
if not the first time, then the second time.
This is a
well,
religious
it's just
thing.
like
you're here
and then we see Noah in the religious garb, and I'm like, okay, you know,
see. Okay, sure.
like it wasn't.
I just thought it was his
wasn't
name,
hard.
to be honest. For me, it was whenever I realized that Adam was Jonas, and I was like, wait, but your name was. Oh, I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm just dumb, I guess.
So perfect segue. Point is like.
No.
Even though the storytelling's good, at the same time, structurally, I have issues with it because of that, right? Where, like, we're not getting more clarification on some of these things. We're just given more questions. Because what was clarified this season? Noah works for somebody, and then what was also clarified more was just things inside the time loop. But I guess what I'm interested in is, like, stuff that could happen outside the time loop.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm having a difficult way of, like, phrasing it. But nevertheless, you said in the first part there are 3 Jonases.
Yeah.
There's 2019/2020 Jonas.
Yeah.
There's Jonas from the future, 33 years older, and then there's Adam.
Right.
So you said you had a problem with that, per se, to the show's detriment, having 3 Jonases? Like, what was that to you?
It wasn't that it was 3 Jonases that was the problem. It was more that I had a really difficult time finding the link between all of them. I think that's more like the actor side than it was the director side.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of dramaturgically, I think it makes sense to have the 3 Jonases and to have them written the way they were and, like, coming from the places that they were and everything. What?
I just remembered something.
What?
The biggest cop-out in the sort of writing in the show was when we see, 2019 Jonas, who teleported to the future, then teleported back to right before his dad killed himself.
Yeah.
Then 12 months later, says to 1986 Claudia, very confusing, yeah, it took me a while to get my brain around it, but I'm actually the one that causes this apocalypse.
Yeah.
But there's just, like, no more explanation than that.
Right.
And I'm like, you kill multiple people just by doing this.
True.
What was said to you that, like, could possibly justify this action?
Yeah.
That's it.
As well as realizing, because the only way, like we were talking about in the first part of this episode, we were talking about how the show becomes, okay, how do we stop the timeline from being consistent and the same every time?
And there's
the only way to do that.
Wins? Are there any wins in this season? It's hard to even tell if there are wins for Adam. You know?
Yes.
But because it's all a time loop, are there wins?
I don't think there can be.
And so then,
well, if it's inevitably a time loop and everyone's goal is to stop the time loop, then no.
So
no. Well, Jonas gets a big win by
and then
not
for some
dying
characters
with
who
everybody else.
have wins, but it's pointless because they're gonna die in a few days.
Right.
Then it's like this dramatic irony is just like what's
but
like this feels nihilistic.
One win, Jonas doesn't die at the end.
Sure.
That's
Present
pretty
Jonas
big.
doesn't
Present
die.
Jonas, yeah.
Doesn't
And
die
that's
at the
pretty
end.
big. That's
and
pretty
then
shocking.
we presume to some other alternate dimension,
Right.
which I'm still like, is this still a time loop? Because I don't trust this show to go out of the time loop. I have no idea about anything anymore.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
I'm trying. But also, yeah. That the only way to get out of the time loop is by going to the first moment, to like the original catalyst.
Inciting incident of the time loop.
Right. And once you go to the beginning and stop that thing or that moment from happening, then everything is corrected, right? Once apparently Jonas realizes that it was him, like you said, why doesn't he kill himself?
Yeah.
Because if his whole thing is
and
I'm trying to save the world, then do it.
And he knows by sacrificing himself, he would save the world.
Yeah.
And once he figures out, but that's when Claudia's introduced. I don't understand what Claudia's doing. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
Because some of this is explained of like, why doesn't Jonas kill himself? Because Claudia convinced him not to. But why is Claudia doing that? No idea. I don't know.
And now she's dead.
I'm not confident that we're going to, because it felt like the loop per se on Claudia has been closed for the most part. I don't know.
I mean,
but like, I'm not. I don't know.
At least this Claudia in this world.
Exactly. So whatever that means.
Yeah.
So like, I guess that's the biggest issue for me. And then when like I said, when you have all these characters not actually experience any wins because they're all in a time loop, and this is the second season of that, then it feels tired to me. So I guess that's my surprise as to why you found this season to be better than the first one.
Well, also, I think it's because of...
And now we've been pooping on this season, even though it's still really well done.
Yeah, there have been a lot. I think it's just there's so many moments. If we're looking at it like Martin Scorsese, right?
Okay.
And I'll explain that in that Martin Scorsese always talks about how whenever he's directing a movie, he does not care about arc. He only cares about moments, which actually makes a lot of fucking sense whenever you're looking at Martin Scorsese movies.
Sure.
Because there's so many movies, pretty much most of Martin Scorsese movies, in my opinion, are way longer than they need to be, have so many characters that I don't give a fuck about. Yeah. But there are a lot of, like, I can think about very specific moments from each Martin Scorsese movie, you know what I mean? And that's what he directs for, right? Is those little moments, those little nuggets of joy. I think there are so many little nuggets in this show.
Okay.
Little scenes where I'm like, damn, that is shocking, and I am rocked to my core.
But okay. But then when the central conflict is a time loop, then it feels, I guess like
it's hard for you to buy into something because you're like, well, this is gonna happen anyway. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Right.
And so then it's doubly so when it's the second season, you figure out much more quickly of like, Claudia's going to try to stop her dad from dying.
That's kind of
Claudia's
funny.
probably the one that kills her dad.
So I think the biggest detriment to the show is that it's accidentally nihilistic.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, It doesn't intend to be, but it's like, but nothing matters anyway.
Yeah. So then I guess it makes me confused. I'm like, why
matter.
are these characters holding on to hope? Is that like,
right.
Are you trying to make a statement about humanity itself?
Which would be cool. It's just that if
but it doesn't feel like that statement's being made.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That
sure.
statement is not clear if that statement is trying to be made.
Well, but that's the thing. A lot of the existential nihilistic theater or just drama that has been made in the past also has that same problem, which is if its message is nothing matters, it's really difficult to, one, keep that entertaining for an entire show, and two, make it clear. If we're looking at like Waiting for Godot, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, all these other shows that the point is nothing matters. The hardest part of all those shows is that it needs to be independently entertaining, and because the show, like the story's not going to help it.
And what I will say, I think that is sort of, it's both yes and no for this show, which is so interesting to dissect, right? Where even with that, there's still a part of me that like, I enjoy watching Hannah Conwald at work. I enjoy when I say at work, I'm not literally going to work at a job. Like, I'm just saying like in the show, just the exploration. Or like,
I think we get it, Danny.
But
not going to work.
That even though like you have a problem with Martha's character, like I thought the acting is so well done, and so then what really intrigues me still is like the scenes between Jonas and Martha, right? The scenes between Lewis Hoffman and Lisa Vicari. I was not looking at my phone and for those names. And then part of
Who
it
actually-
too is to see Ulrich, much older, actually find Mikkel,
Yeah.
and see him for the first time in 33 years.
I mean, the endorphins.
Yeah, that's part of it is what a genuinely wonderful moment to watch these characters go through that experience.
Yeah.
That it's frustrating then to take a step back of this doesn't matter.
But also,
your actions will amount to nothing.
Knowing that this world has now officially ended, and that no matter what happens next season, you know what I mean?
Well, and then I just remembered there was a black hole at the end of season 1. What was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That there is. Okay. Yes.
As in you agree, or is that loop going to be closed, quote unquote? There's a black hole at the end of season 1. We know Alexander and Regina saw it, for example.
There's a black hole for a reason.
Okay. All right, fine. I will allow this then. It's weird that we got no answer to that at all in the second season.
But I would say the same about starting the entire fucking series off with Michael.
Sure.
Yeah,
but there's a question being asked that eventually there's going to be an answer.
I guess.
And there was an answer in that season.
Yeah.
Quasi.
Yeah. Right.
Quasi. Now we know why Michael.
We definitely know why.
Really killed himself.
Right.
But we knew that in the first season it was related to all this time travel shit.
Right.
Which was a good enough reason at the time for that sort of not to be closed.
You mentioned the superb acting, I believe, on the part of Hannah. I am curious now. Are there any specific, because you really gassed up
Yes.
Ulrich last season.
I loved Ulrich in the last season.
So, like I said, although I agree that Ulrich had a great season 1, who are your standouts? Do you have any gold medals for this season?
It's Lewis Hoffman's Jonas.
Yeah,
I think
he steps the fuck up.
Yeah.
He becomes an absolute main character in this. And not just in literally main character, I mean he does some heavy fucking lifting in some of these scenes.
And I think I may butcher this name. I'm giving myself that window of mistake. Andreas Pichman, not entirely sure, who plays the stranger, aka Older Jonas. I think he also does a really, really great job.
Yeah.
Because it's the same way of what was occurring with Ulrich in the first season, that there's so much screen time and there's so much to chew on for these actors and for these characters that you can't help but just feel ingratiated every single time they're on screen. Right. And so that was a big thing for me. I'm sounding like a hypocrite perhaps because I'm criticizing the show and I'm complimenting it at the same time because it's doing this the most yin yang thing ever, where it's doing something really well and really not really poorly, but just not as well as it could be at the same time, which is fascinating. That even though I'm enjoying watching those characters, at the same time, I hate watching those characters because I know their actions won't mean anything. But what's the saving grace quasi at the same time is these characters, those for the most part, most of the side that's the issue. The side characters, the stakes feel very personal for the most part, feel very real, feel very tangible. You understand what they're doing, you understand what they're striving for, and it's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
But then when you have big plot-related characters with Adam and Claudia, and when I say Claudia, I mean older Claudia, much older Claudia.
Right.
You don't understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. And so then it's just confusing structurally, and I think it hurts the ensemble as a whole, right? I mean, there are still some characters where what is Magnus's and Francisca's objective? They're trying to figure it out, even though the audience has really just has figured it out for a long time. Okay, whatever. But I think that's the biggest thing. But like Katarina is still a joy to watch,
Yeah, yeah.
Or like Charlotte and Peter, or I thought Charlotte was great last season. I wish we got more Charlotte this season, but are still a joy to watch this season.
Yeah.
I think Hannah is still fascinating to watch this season.
Absolutely.
Like there
Awesome
are some
dramatic
characters
character.
that I'm like, man, they are even like younger Egon Tiedemann, and then doubly so older Egon Tiedemann in this season.
I was about to say.
Is like I love watching them.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that I agree with you that it's difficult because what they do to themselves is that they have such interesting and vivid and alive characters that have really, like you said, understandable goals. That the second that you introduce this whole time loop, time traveling thing into the mix, whenever a character figures that out for the first time, nothing they care about matters anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's impossible to really keep following them because everything that they cared about now is very irrelevant, or very little relevant.
Exactly. So it's the framing of it. This is see, folks. This is why we do this show. When we dissect and we try to figure out what's going on.
Come across these realizations.
Because we have ideas, we have these thoughts, and we try to figure out why are we having these ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, we really have stumbled across quite a few things today. Although I want to give a quick honorable mention to again, I'm gonna say sorry for pronunciation.
Okay.
Christian Petzold, who is older Egon.
Yeah.
He's easy second place for me this season. I thought he did a stellar job.
Yeah, and his character had more to chew on.
A lot to chew on. I think that partially that was a little bit of a writing thing for his.
Yes.
One actor that worked against poor writing, I thought, that really, knocked that out of the park in terms of their little moments, especially their moments of breath and pause.
Yeah.
Was the actor Ulica Jenkins maybe, who played 1987 Claudia.
Okay.
The kind of middle-aged Claudia.
Her character had so much to chew on.
Yeah. No, and
the acting performance was great.
It was.
See,
and
like
there were so many times where she had no right to make that script decent. But she really, really did.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that, like, the objective for that character seemed super duper tangible and super duper understandable. And her older self, I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Don't understand. Like, what's the point of what you're trying to get at?
Right.
So, and then and there are still questions being asked at the end of this season. What is this Martha? What is Adam doing? Where is he gonna go from here? How does he survive this? Charlotte went to the future. Then did Elizabeth sacrifice herself or something?
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. So,
which is beautiful.
Yeah. Did we close the loop finally on the three Jonases? On like structural, is that structural issue? Is that?
Yeah. Us? You mean?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, like you had a qualm with it.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it for a brief second again.
I think the main thing that I was just gonna say is that it's really difficult for me. In director and writer brain, I am really loving it. In actor brain, I am thinking to myself, they are.
It's so hard to track.
Right. I would be dying as an actor, looking at the other people's performances and being like, wish I would have fucking known that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine that many of these Jonases, if any of them, were watching the others' performances.
Because those three characters are so ingrained in their given circumstances that like.
Yeah.
Were they given to them?
It's
like,
difficult.
Do those actors like, hey, like this happens to you. Keep this on the down low,
Right. Yes, because it makes it really difficult for me that those characters are written to be at their core similar and are visibly not at all.
So you like this season more than the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me phrase. I had a better time.
Okay.
I had a much better time.
Gotcha.
This was way easier to down.
Because this season is less of a puzzle. Yeah. And I actually like that a lot more about the first season. It was a puzzle. The first season was a puzzle.
Yeah.
This season isn't a puzzle. This season isn't about figuring out that it's a time loop. This season is about accepting the time loop.
Right.
And I wasn't able to accept it. And that's the big thing. It's the 2-minute warning. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess, like, what are your closing thoughts, I suppose, on this season?
Ooh.
Should I have done that?
No,
Okay.
no. I think it was good. I think it was. I liked it more than the first season. In that it was more entertaining, and there were in the same way that I really like Endgame, and I think that you don't like Endgame as much as Infinity War. Is that fair to say?
Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Okay.
I mean, Endgame is all payoff, which
That's
is
the thing,
so nice.
Is like I think that there's
Probably
so
by them
much payoff in
by
season
themselves. I like Marvel Avengers Infinity War
Right.
more than Endgame, but like in context, I like Endgame more than Infinity War.
Okay, sweet, right, and the exact same. I like all of the payoff that they give me in season 2. I'm okay with you giving me a shit ton of questions as long as I'm also getting a little bit of answer as well.
Yeah.
And they finally start giving you answers in season 2, and that makes it a lot easier for me to consume. I will put up with a lot,
Yeah,
because I'm also getting a lot.
I guess
you know?
I guess my biggest issue is that like even though we got answers for characters that I'm like cool, but I don't think we got answers that like mattered per se. I don't think we got enough answers for Adam, or even though Adam was introduced, I don't think we got enough answers for Noah, Ish, or for Claudia especially. Like or like what is destiny? You know, like we only got some semblance of an answer of that until Noah tried to kill Adam, and I'm like, okay, so now I have finally bought in. Destiny is the thing in this world, and not some contrived narrative bullshit.
And we'll get to season 3 someday. But Danny, next week, what are we viewing?
We're watching a movie that I've been wanting to watch for a long time. It's a movie that came out in 2000, and I'm really excited because we saw this actor at work, and then I saw this actor in another movie. Well, Mac, we're gonna watch a movie starring Tony Leung, and it's titled "In the Mood for Love." Oh, we're gonna have a blast.
Okay.